All right. Well, welcome everybody, and happy Monday morning to you. This is the Must Read Alaska show. The date is August 1. It's the first day of August. Looks like August out there. I got to tell you, the August rains are here in Anchorage, and looks like across South Central Alaska. But we're welcome to the Must Read Alaska show, coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. And I want to remind everybody that Must Read Alaska is a force for good. We try to do the right thing for Alaska every day, and we really appreciate you, our readers, our listeners. We have thousands of listeners to this show all across the world, and I really appreciate everybody coming alongside us to do good in the world out there. And to please consider supporting Must Read Alaska by going to our website, mustreadalaska.com, and hitting that donate button. It really keeps this operation in the black, and that really helps us keep going for year after year. We've been up and running since 2016, and John Quick, my co-host, has been he's the one who helped us launch this show, and we've done, John, over 215 shows, or how many have we done now?
We've done about 215 shows, and we have about 160,000 downloads so far, and we are usually ranked in the top 200 on iTunes any given moment. And depending on which week it is, we're also ranked that's in the US, we're also ranked in the top 200 on iTunes in Austria or UK or various other countries over in that region, which, people are obsessed with Alaska. People are always asking me, well, why are you guys so popular outside of Alaska? Well, flip on your TV and notice how there's 12 different reality shows at any given moment for Alaska, and people are literally obsessed with Alaska. So we get folks from literally all over the globe just tuning in because it's Alaska and they want to hear what's going on in Alaska.
Yeah, and this is like authentic Alaska. This is not tourism Alaska. This is not reality show. This is like how we even function. And we're just sort of up here in the last frontier, just struggling like everybody else in the world to try to figure out how to make the world work better. If you do not subscribe to the newsletter, head to the right side of mustreadalaska.com, click on that newsletter button, and then you get yourself on the list. And every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we send out a newsletter that has the links to all the stories that you might have missed online. And we always have news in the newsletter that you won't find anywhere else in the world. Trust me. Thank you to Shoshana Gungerstein for U.S. Senate for sponsoring our show. She is our show sponsor for this month. She is pro responsible resource development. She's opened up the Alaska oil fields. You can find out more about Shoshana Gungerstein for Senate at www.gungerstein.com, and that's spelled gun, like GUNGURSTEIN.com. And yes, she is pro Second Amendment. Well, before we get too far into the show, I want to make sure that people know we've got a special guest coming up with Charlie Pierce. But first, I want to hear from you, John, about what's going on in the center of the universe down there on the Kenai Peninsula, especially the heartbeat of the universe, Nikiski.
Well, things are going well down here on the Kenai Peninsula. It seems to always be going pretty awesome. The people are fishing on the Kenai, getting very excited about, folks are dipping it and whatnot. So that's always a good sign. I'm very excited about our special guest today because one of the best parts about the Kenai Peninsula is Mayor Pierce kept the Kenai Peninsula borough open. He didn't force mask mandates down people's throats. He didn't force other ridiculous business side effects to happen because of COVID. His mantra was the peninsula is open for business, and he kept that mantra for the entire time of COVID. And he got a lot of flack from the left for it, but he stuck to what he thought was right. And the Kenai Peninsula is better for it. You have a lot of businesses that were able to survive because of his pro-business, pro-common sense choices, and we're better for it on the Kenai than some other cities that were forced to lock down the whole time. So that's kind of my to-do here on the peninsula this weekend, is just being grateful that our special guest had the wherewithal to put his money where his mouth is and be a mayor that stuck up for freedom.
Well, I just want to mention that a little and add to that a little bit more before we bring Charlie in, and Charlie's being very patient there waiting in the green room. But it is during the pandemic, a lot of the state was shut down. various municipalities shut down. They shut down their governments. They shut down businesses. A lot of businesses never came back. People were traumatized. Children stayed out of school. Charlie Pierce said, no, we're not doing that. We are open for business. And I can't even tell you how many times I got in my car and I drove down to the Kenai just to get a taste of freedom during those 2 years of really awful lockdown policies here in Anchorage. It just was an escape for me. I just had to get away. And really, we'll always admire Charlie for that. And so without further ado, Charlie Pierce, welcome to the show. How's your mic sounding?
Good. I can hear both of you real well. Good morning. Thank you for having me. And I appreciate the compliments there.
Well, yeah. And I was at a wonderful fundraiser for you down in Nikiski not too long ago. And it was a great fundraiser. You had a car show with I had no idea there were so many classic cars on the Kenai Peninsula. You guys are gun nuts down there and car nuts. I mean, you guys have some classic cars. And you auctioned off an AR-15, I think, and some other neat stuff like some sort of a Vespa. And I mean, that was a really cool fundraiser out there, right on the bluff. Couldn't believe that beautiful day that we had. Wonderful barbecue and just you guys are living the dream down in the Kenai.
Well, first I'd want to say thank you to my friends that hosted that. And I consider them true friends, very close friends. And look what they did. I mean, very generous, very kind, opened their homes, cooked an amazing meal, invited Alaska's finest to a location where we could break bread and have conversation and really show appreciation for many of the blessings that we have in living in Alaska. So I have great friends and I have a beautiful, wonderful family, and I'm blessed.
Yeah, you're blessed. And I always love coming down there and visiting. So, but now you're trying to take that message to the rest of the state, which is let's live free. Let's remember our roots. Let's remember what this country is founded on liberty, personal responsibility, freedom, and prosperity and opportunity and striving. And you've done all that. You've really made that happen on the Kenai, and now you'd like to sort of take that to the rest of the state. How's campaigning going for you?
Well, it's tiring. We've been really kind of beating the pavement. It's a small grassroots effort. Truly, we're not seeing the contributions from the special interest groups, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that are being donated to a number of candidates. We're not seeing that. Obviously, we're not seeing it for a specific reason, is because I've said I'm not interested in representing the special interest. I'm really interested in representing all Alaskans. And I don't believe for a moment that Alaska should be for rent. And I think we are in many aspects. There's lots of money that comes into the state that influences much of the decisions that are made behind closed doors, But you think about it, the legislature is the one group that has exempted themselves from the Open Meetings Act. Isn't that rather interesting? Every other governing agency in the state, whether it be a council, a city council, or an assembly, groups, they have to abide by the Open Meetings Act. And what it does is it allows the governance and the decision making to be done in the open public. That makes it public. Well, much of the work that gets done in Juneau, they're in Juneau. They're away from their constituents. They're kind of hidden on most good days. Most of us can't get there and are not there knocking on their doors. And so the rooms and the hallways are filled with lobbyists and filled with special interest people that are specifically interested in and carrying their torch for their specific issue. And there's so many issues that get ignored in Alaska. And I think that Alaskans in general, the average person that lives in Alaska, that's beating the pavement, getting up early, going to work, and trying to make a living in Alaska is kind of forgotten. There's a few things that we grovel over and we argue over, the PFD. We argue for better jobs, better economy, better outcomes. You look at our schools, we've taken Bible and prayer out of our schools. You look at how we've transitioned and what we've become, and it's troubling. It's troubling from all indicators. You know, when you look down the train tracks, and I asked you to look at it and see what you think. What's coming at you? What's next? What do we have next? And what I'd say, I come from a principle of that. Number one, we're all adults first. We're individuals. We're adults first, and we're responsible for ourselves. We should be responsible for ourselves. I was the guy that said we're all essential. What I meant by that was there was a time where we were picking and choosing the level of importance and decisions that were being made. And we were really kind of dissecting our local communities and putting everybody in a specific box. And I don't like that, because I think we're all essential, and we all have something important to say, and we should be heard. We should be allowed to go up to a microphone in our local assembly chambers and be able to share our thoughts and our feelings about the world we're living in, and not be heckled in the background, or not be chastised or be threatened when you walk out the door. Yeah. Go to the Anchorage Community Chambers and listen to a meeting sometime.
Oh, yeah.
Think about what's going on, what we've become as individuals. We have truly forgotten and lost the ability to agree to disagree. And that saddens me, that we take things so personal and personable. And you know, even in Juneau, when you look at the relationships that are there, and you ask yourself why you see no results, or you see the last 10 days of a legislative session where lawmakers scurry around the hall groveling and making deals to try to get something done so they can get out of session on time. And what I would like to see is the same level of energy and urgency applied throughout the entire session. So I have a lot of thoughts. The campaign's going really well. I'm listening to the voice of the people. What I hear from folks is they're concerned. Obviously, they're concerned about their local economy. They're concerned that they're having to pay $5-6 a gallon for gas. They're worried about how they're going to heat their homes this winter. Worried about fuel oil costs, and they get a $600 dividend and stimulus for energy in their PFD. You know, and you've got two groups that are so divided and can't even see the hurt and hearts that are on the streets in Alaska, and they ignore that. They ignore it daily. And they say, well, you know, you can't spend your PFD responsibly, so we're going to hold it back and make sure that when we give it to you, you'll be able to spend it on the right things. I don't get that. I don't see that. It troubles me that lawmakers will come to us and tell us, well, you just don't understand. I don't want another lawmaker. I don't want another lawmaker to come to me and tell me that I just don't understand. Because if you do.
So Charlie, this winter, we're probably going to see a catastrophic situation for people. I would say anywhere from, you know, Cantwell North up to Barrow, and then in all the rural areas and in the interior, where the cost of their heating fuel is going to so far outstrip their ability to pay for it, that we may very well see people just walking away from their homes, and hopefully they drain their pipes before they do so that they don't burst their pipes and destroy their homes. But that we may see people just walk away, because if you have to pay $3,000 a month to keep your house warm, it's just not viable. You know, you're not going to be able to do it. And whoever's governor starting December 1 is going to face this. This is going to be one of the biggest problems they face, is they're going into the teeth of winter, and they will have maybe villages that didn't even get in their fuel oil in time before the rivers froze. Or maybe people in Fairbanks who just say, I can't do it anymore, and they just leave the state because they're heating the homes. They don't have the money to even pay the bills, so they're not going to be able to heat the homes. And this is not a trick question. I really don't know the answer to it myself. And if I were in the position of governor, I don't know what I would do. How do we face this kind of a problem this winter when we know that people are going to be suffering from these high fuel prices?
We're going to have to put a lot of hearts and heads together in the legislature to figure out how we're going to resolve it. We've lost 18,000 people in Alaska since 2017, 2018. You know, COVID put a big turn on us. Where are the workers? I heard from a number of folks who said, you know, I'm running a roofing company. I can't hire I can't hire any labor force. So I can't do the jobs that I have. Can't hire a labor force. I mean, there's work. There seems to be jobs out there and work to bid on, but yet you can't find the labor force to go out and actually perform the work. Alaska is a very challenging place to live. You know, if you don't have a viable job, a good 12 months a year job, and where you have predictability and certainty that you're going to be able to sustain yourself. It's tough. It's very tough. You got people working 1 and 2 and 3 jobs. Some are doing that to make ends meet. You've got, you know, it's all of the challenges that we have. I call them dots, right? I like to put it in the dot section and try to connect the dots. How do you connect all the dots and resolve all the problems, all the heartache and all the hardship? But I like to focus on the good too. I like to keep in mind that we are blessed, that we do have many, many good things going on as well. We could do better. We can clearly do better. And I guess that's what Edie Grunwald and I are proposing to do, is just to try to make it better. You know, I think our foster kids, when I heard our foster kids are transferred from home to home, and they just put their clothes in a garbage bag as they transfer them from home to home. Our foster care programs and our children that are in homes that are challenging need to be, that issue is a big, big issue for me. It's a big heartfelt issue for me, and it needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed. There should be no trafficking of children in our state. That's going to be a real high priority, and it should have been a high priority for prior administrations.
I have heard a lot. I'll let you talk in a minute, John. I've heard a lot about the foster care system in Alaska and some of the outrageous stories. And people ask me to write about these stories a lot, and I don't have the capacity to do it. The stories are very involved, and they're intricate, they are complicated. There's sometimes a lot of bad people on a lot of sides, and sometimes there's no bad people on any side. But it's, you know, these are hard stories for me to write because they take a lot of emotional energy and time. But I do know that I'm hearing from a lot of Alaskans that our foster care system is just absolutely broken. So that is something that I would absolutely agree with you that needs to be addressed. John, you wanted to say something? I'm sorry.
So Mayor Pierce, last week I had Senator Mike Showers on, and he is big on getting our election system kind of shored up and better. He reminded me that, I don't know, a year ago or so, that the Division of Elections had a major data breach of about 100,000 people's social security numbers, you know, home addresses, basically everything you would need to open a credit card or turn in an absentee ballot. What about the election? Is you and your team, what would you do different? What would you come in and change? Do you think our election needs any, you know, standing up? Are you worried about election fraud? What do you and your team stand for when it comes to that kind of stuff?
Well, I don't think you should even ask the question. I think we all know that there's real serious problems with our election processes. Ballots, extra ballot. I heard there's 130,000 more ballots being mailed out than there are registered voters. What happens with those 130,000 ballots? Where are they going? They're going to addresses for folks that are no longer alive, no longer live here, that you know, they've moved, long since moved, you know, and have left, and we've never ever taken the initiative or had the time, I guess, to purge the file. And I don't know the specifics as to how the file will be purged, but the file will be purged. That's the first priority that Edie takes on. Edie was on Michael Dukes this morning, did a great job of talking about this very issue as a first and foremost priority for us as an administration. And it's not a matter of, after 4 years, asking us. You won't ask us why we didn't do anything. Well, you'll probably, you'll thank us for actually fixing it, making it better, making it more reliable, making more certainty in it, that the machines that are being used are not going to be manipulated or can be programmed to cheat, and that we're going to have you know, we may even institute some hand counts to do verifications just to make certain that that there is accuracy and thoroughness and trust. It's about building trust between the folks that go into the ballot box and vote. On the peninsula, John, I know you're well aware of it, that we were able to block vote by mail. We killed vote by mail on the peninsula, and it took an initiative to actually do it. Our assembly would not let the people on the peninsula put a vote by mail question on the ballot. And I'd like to revisit that statewide and look at the vote by mail and the constitutionality of it. And if we can eliminate a vote by mail opportunity throughout the entire state, would be my desire to do just that. And get back to, there's some things that probably needed to be fixed and needed to change, but there was an old voting system that used to work real well. It was called, we walked into the voting precincts that we lived in, and there was a location set up, and there was machines there. You were handed a ballot, you showed your ID, you signed a card to verify your signature, and then you went in and you voted. And there was some trust built in that system. And for convenience purposes and other arguments, we've heard all the arguments, well, you get better voter turnout, well, you get more people voting, and you know what, it'll just be quicker and easier and it's convenient. But the problem with convenience oftentimes leaves loopholes that allow people to take advantage of the system. There are people that are honest and there are people that are dishonest. And I think that what we're going to do is make a priority, make it a very, very high priority, go and fix things. Edie's ready to get after that. And I think you'll be happy with the results as it carries out.
Yeah, you guys, I just did the math on it. We've got 597,400 registered voters in the state. And according to the census, we have 733,000 and change people, which leaves us with what this leaves us with is 136,000 people under the age of 18, supposedly, or felons who can't vote.
Right.
And so, we know that that the math isn't adding up. We have nearly 600,000 people registered to vote in Alaska. And like you said, there's got to be ways. And Senator Mike Shower, who was on our show, talked about all the databases that can be used to legally purge the rolls. And I think that is something that Edie needs to certainly drill into as lieutenant governor. So I encourage that. Absolutely.
I'm sure we'll have Shower support. We'll work alongside Showers, and we'll make sure that we push our changes and the fixes through the legislature. I think that we'll try to garner up enough support to make sure that Alaskans can actually trust when they go into a ballot box and vote that it's going to count.
Well, what else are people talking about out there on the campaign trail?
Well, they're nervous. I mentioned, you mentioned fuel oil. Fuel oil is the big one. Energy cost, and just the cost of living in Alaska. Food. Look what food has done in the last during this inflationary period. Restaurants. You go into a restaurant. I was talking with Andy Kreiner, did a fundraiser for me, and his food costs have tripled, yet his prices on his menu have not. And so, he's at break-even point in most cases, and on most days. And it's just so hard. It's so hard to run a business right now. It's hard to know what do we do? Do you raise your prices and limit the number of customers that come to your store? And it's just hard. Medical care cost. You look at the medical care. You look at the next. Are we staging ourselves for the next event? You talk about food shortage. You got you got the fisheries issues that are going on. Those are real important, folks, right now. You've got on the peninsula, you've got dip net fishery taking place, and it's hot and heavy. And you see the line of cars coming from Anchorage, and the traffic has been busy. We're seeing many more large motorhomes, and I just can't help but think of, wow. Look at the fuel bill on that. How can you afford it? I knew I had a motorhome, and I'm sitting there saying, I'm glad I sold it, because look at the fuel cost to drive the things, man. It's huge. So just a variety of real mix, but it's concern, and it's concern because there is, when you look at the state, you look at what have we done. If you look at where we've been the last 4 years and what have we accomplished, and are we better off? A lot of folks are looking at that and saying, man, where's the results? Where's the results? What are we doing? What are we trying to do to make this place a better place to live? and to attract new investment into the state. What are we doing as an administration to create an opportunity to where others can invest? Well, until we have a fiscal policy and a tied down fiscal policy where we're not overspending, and we're not spending 3 times our revenue or 1.5 times our revenue over and above. I mean, oil goes to 112. I watched it go into 112, 114, kind of creeped up. And look at the capital budget they threw out there.
Yeah.
And just look at the budget. Just look at the spending budget.
Yeah.
And so what I'd say to Alaskans, if you want to talk about budgeting, you want to talk about building yourself you've got a patched ship with a bunch of holes in it, and they're all patched. And 2 years from now, when oil goes back down to $60 a barrel, look, Alaska, we do this to ourselves. We should be saving all that money we're making right now. We should be putting it in the bank and not spending it, saving it. We did that at the borough at a smaller scale, right? On the front end of when we took over as mayor, and John and I went in there, the first thing we did is a hiring freeze and a travel freeze, and we started saving money. Started trying to save some money. So we saved a little bit on the front end, never anticipating that we would have a COVID event, right? Well, when the COVID event came, we sat down on that February and we in the conference room, and we all looked at some of the directors and we said, we're ready for this. We're ready for this. We can respond. Let's put a plan together.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we went into our budgets and we looked even deeper to try to cut and try to save and try to avoid spending. We were doing the avoid spending exercise. The state doesn't do that very often. You look at the state's budget right now. If you didn't have all the infusion of federal money and you didn't have the extra money we're making off of oil right now, we'd be in one big hurt. We'd be one big hurt in place. Your legislature would be going back into session, or they probably wouldn't have left. They probably would have stayed into overdrive and had extra days, and they probably would have tried to come up with some tax policy, is what I would say. To fill the void. And so in government, what I've always said is spend, and then tax. At the local level, that seems to where, and the local level's much easier to put a tax on you than at the state level, but they spend, and then they tax. They look at themselves and say, well, wait, we can't afford, we're outside of our window on the balance here, and we need to make some revenue. And when you talk about revenue, oftentimes when you talk about revenue, many folks think, well, just tax. That's revenue. That's a source of revenue. Just tax. You're the taxing authority. You can tax us. And some Alaskans say we don't pay any taxes. Well, I'd say you taking my PFD as a tax. That's what I'd say. I'm a dividend. I'm a shareholder. You're a shareholder. We're all equally shareholders. That judge that ruled that the legislature does the appropriations and he was correct. That judge was correct. That's what they do. But the judge should have also taken into consideration that's the same body that creates laws that should not be ignored. Exactly. And so when he said, yes, you appropriate, but what I would have said as a judge, I would have pointed over in the corner and said, you have a statutory formula that you created, that you approved, that was in line with the people, for the people of Alaska, and you're ignoring it, and you cannot ignore it.
That was such a disaster.
Yeah, and what I would have done as governor is I would have appealed it. I would have appealed that ruling. I would have taken that to a higher court and said, look, you cannot ignore, and most judges do respect local governance and where they create law for local communities. And as long as you're following your laws and you're following the bounds of your codes, the boundaries of your codes, judges usually rule with the municipalities and saying you're following your code. You passed that code. That was a code and you passed it and you must follow it. The state must follow their laws too. And they're not.
So John, before we have to close up for the half hour that we've got, do you have any other questions for our friend Charlie Pierce?
Yeah, so Mayor Pierce, there's going to be somebody on here that's listening to you for the first time, and what would you tell that person you stand for? They're going to listen to this podcast, they're going to hear about you for the first time, and they're going to go tell their friends, hey, I just listened to this guy, Mayor Pierce, he sounds awesome. What would you tell them that you stand for if you were to be our future governor?
Well, I think that one of the things I try to do and I try to carry out daily is making sure that the people that work for me are successful. And, I have a large family. I have 11 grandkids, 5 boys, and each of those boys I worry about whether they're going to thrive and be successful and be able to take care of themselves. And so I think as a parent, one of the things I think we need to do as Alaskans is focus on parenting and parenting well with our children, because it starts in the home. And so what am I about? And well, I'd say that I'm a very grounded individual, and I care about people. I care about my family. I care about my friends, and I care about outcomes. And I truly believe that through encouragement and through positive reinforcement, we'll all do better. We can all do better. And I truly want better for Alaska too. I think Alaskans have been standing by and watching their state just kind of, limp along. And you don't see any new major investment into our state because we don't have a fiscal policy. And from year to year, we don't really know what the tax policy is going to be on one of our major industries, the oil industry. And so it's just a question. There's a lot of uncertainty that people see from Alaska. And what I want, I'm an individual that likes to create certainty and has predictability and some promise in the mix as well, so that we can have we know that where we're at, we know which way the train's going, and we know that we can predict how with some level of high probability that we're actually going to produce good. We're going to have better results at the end of the day. And I guess that's where I'm at. I just want to make it better. I want to produce some results. I think it's time. Alaska needs to get up and thrive.
You are right. Alaska, there's your key takeaway, folks. Alaska needs to get up and thrive. And like they do on the Kenai. Kenai is an example of a place where, not everything's perfect. Of course, you've got crime, you've got drug problems, you've got the same kinds of problems that all of humanity has, which is, we're fallen people. So, but it's amazing how functioning you've got that borough, and it is such a much better example of what we want America to be than almost any other place in the state. And so that is, I think, a credit to you, a credit to your leadership, because a lot of these cities and communities are coming out of this COVID economy in really poor shape. And you guys are coming out in really strong shape. So I congratulate you for that. And I thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thank you.
Boy, that was the fastest dang half hour ever.
Yes,
I want to thank you. I want to thank Shoshana Gungerstein for U.S. Senate for sponsoring the Must Read Alaska show. Thank you, Shoshana. Check out her campaign at www.gungerstein.com. Gungerstein is GUNGURSTEIN.com. And she talks about her campaign as an independent, nonpartisan candidate for Senate. And if you'd like to support the conservative side of the news, well, the donate button's on the right-hand side of mustreadalaska.com. We really appreciate all the donations that come in. It really helps us keep the lights on here. And John, you're going to have the show tomorrow or Wednesday. What are you doing this week?
So later today, I have Dave Donnelly on, the Anchorage School Board member, the only conservative Anchorage School Board member. And he's going to be talking about what it looks like to be a conservative on a biggest school board here in Alaska. So that'll be exciting at 4:30 today.
That is fantastic. And Dave Donnelly is, he's a true warrior. He's out there fighting the good fight every day against a really, really socialistic, crazy, woke Anchorage school board, which I don't even know how anybody can put their kids in these public schools up here in Anchorage. It's so crazy. So until next time, everybody, we're signing off from somewhere in Alaska. Bye-bye now.
Take care.